Welcome back, my friends. Laszlo Montgomery here, back again with another China History podcast, Yunnan Province Part 2 for you. Nobody complained or anything, but there were lots of Chinese names and terms last episode, way more than usual. And I'm guessing there's going to be just as many today, plus names from Part 1 that get a mention here, too. So if this is leaving you dazed and confused, head over to the website at Teacup.media and you'll see a listing in PDF format of everything you might want to know. Pinyin, Chinese, and English, all in one place, and you can download it too. Last time in Part 1, we looked at the earliest kingdoms that ruled in Yunnan and their ties to China from the Zhou to the Tang. We looked at the Dali Kingdom centered around present-day Kunming, as well as the Dali-based Cuanman and Nanzhao kingdoms. It was a long, hard-scrabble period between the 8th and 9th centuries between Nanzhao, Tibet, and Tang China. Alliances, broken alliances, military campaigns, and battles. All three ultimately wore each other down to the bone, and a high price was paid for choosing this antagonistic alternative to living together in peace and harmony. The transition from the bloody end of Nanzhao to the founding of the Dali Kingdom in 937 had a period of 3 regimes, one long and 2 short, that ran consecutively in that northwest part of Yunnan. Song Dynasty and other official historians preferred to sweep these short-lived regimes under the rug and build a bridge directly from Nanzhao straight to Dali. But this all happened, and let's quickly review it. The Kingslayer, who ended Nanzhao, was one of their own, a noble named Zheng. He took it upon himself to overthrow the royal Ming family of Nanzhao. Going back to Xinyu law, these Nanzhao kings had all been surnamed Meng. Zheng put the whole family to the sword, murdered 800 of them in a bloody coup, killed the final Nanzhao monarch, and usurped the throne. And with the Mengs out of the way, Zheng founded Dachanghe, the great kingdom of eternal peace. And it lasted a good 26 years, which is far short of eternal. 902 to 928. Dachanghe was one of the countless mini-dramas happening inside and on the periphery of China during the 5 Dynasties, 10 Kingdoms period. This Dachanghe was the immediate successor state to Nanzhao. They administered their state in very much the same way the Nanzhao Kingdom did. The 3 rulers of Dachanghe, all surnamed Zheng, did what every ruler did going back to Nanzhao. They wrapped themselves up in Buddhism for majesty and legitimacy. By the 10th century, Buddhism had penetrated throughout Yunnan. Geographically, Dachanghe had similar borders to Nanzhao. The Dachanghe Great Kingdom of Eternal Peace covered most all of present-day Yunnan, parts of northern Burma, and northern Laos. As the main power center in this part of the southwest of China, during the 5 Dynasties, 10 Kingdoms period, Dachanghe maintained relations with former Shu, southern Han, and later Tang. The Zhengs viewed their kingdom as the successors of the fallen Tang Dynasty. There's not much source material on Dachanghe, and as I said, succeeding dynasties in China ignored them. Many inside the former Nanzhao Kingdom weren't at all appreciative about the violent manner in which Zheng went about establishing his regime. So he tried to make amends, show contrition, build temples, but as Matthew had written in 2652, live by the sword, die by the sword. After nearly a quarter century, this longest lasting of the 3 regimes, sandwiched in between the Nanzhao and Dali kingdoms, fell to a competitor. Sometime between 926 and 928, an official from the Changhe court named Yang Ganzhen overthrew the Zhengs. He sort of did to them what the Zhengs had done to the Mengs of Nanzhao. He killed them all. They were done in, and Yang Ganzhen went ahead and founded a new state called Da Tianxing. Yang put a puppet ruler on the throne at first to rule through, but 10 months later pushed him off and changed the name of the kingdom once more to Da Yining, and took the top spot for himself, which was the emperorship. Da Changhe to Da Tianxing to Da Yining. Then, not long after, in 930, one of Yang Ganzheng's brothers usurped the throne, which created a political crisis, and at this dire moment enters our hero, Duan Siping. Duan Siping came from a family that had served the state, but he had fallen afoul of the Yangs while they ruled in Yunnan and chose to live in exile. There, he spent years in the east of Yunnan, recruiting tribal leaders to his side to rise up against the Yining regime of the Yangs. Duan, together with the 37 tribes of eastern Yunnan, combined with all Duan Siping's Wuman allies in western Yunnan, and were able to overthrow the Yangs. Now, he didn't go after the Yangs like Zheng Maisi did to the Mongs of Nanzhao. He was a little more gracious, and thanks to such foresight, he very well may have spared Yunnan from a massive civil war and a continuation of this cycle of vengeance. The final Yang Emperor, Nanzhao, committed suicide in the same year, ending Great Yining's big moment on the stage of Chinese history. After signing up the 37 Aboriginal lords in eastern Yunnan, Duan Siping went on to conquer the capital city of Dali and founded a kingdom of the same name. Duan and his descendants, who shared his Duan surname, for the next few hundred years, ruled over this Dali Kingdom. Well, sort of. And with such a location, Dali was a hybrid culture, like Nanzhao. The Duan kings ruled like the same Buddhist kings as in Nanzhao. The government structure and titles were similar. The Dali Kingdom wasn't immune from the kinds of internal palace intrigue that affected so many other royal families. In 944, Duan Siping passed the kingship to his son, and not 1 year later, in 945, one of his brothers usurped the throne. In the meantime, in 960, the Song Dynasty was founded. The Dali Kingdom was concurrent with the Han, Nanzhao with the Tang, and the Dali Kingdom developed side by side with the Song. Upon Zhao Kuangyin's accession to the throne, the Dali king sent congratulations. And after the Song conquest of Sichuan in 965, Dali found itself surrounded by Song China, Tibet, the Pala Empire in mostly Bengal, India, the Kingdom of Pagan in Myanmar, and Dai Viet in northern Vietnam. In 982, Dali accepted Song suzerainty and vassal status, but remained independent. Zhao Kuangyin and later Song emperors decided not to repeat the Tang mistake of engaging with Dali or bloodying themselves by repeating Tang miscalculations of warring with these southwestern polities like Nanzhao. Song China got to enjoy a peaceful Dali, not a warlike Nanzhao. China, during the early Song, had their own headaches to their north with the Khitan, Tanguts, Mongols, Jurchens. They made a conscious effort not to endure another belligerent front in their southwest. Unlike Nanzhao, and this was one of the most significant ways in which they differed, Dali didn't have to make these alliances where they were always the inferior ally, the one being used as a lever between the two superpowers. Strength-wise, they were more on par with Song China, and while Dali wasn't an isolationist kingdom, they had few interactions with their neighbors. And where China was concerned, the Dali Kingdom couldn't have acted less confrontational, and that's how both sides liked it. Right at the outset, the Song founder, Zhao Kuangyin, drew the border between Song China and Dali at the Dadu River. And he let it be known, west of that river, out of sight, out of mind. He wasn't going after that, and it mostly stayed that way until the arrival of the Mongols. Tribute missions were made according to the customs of the day. It got to the point where the Song court was discouraging these gifts, sometimes even refusing them, and consequently, because of the slowdown in interaction, Song-era historical scholarship of Dali was impacted. Most sources on Dali come from Buddhist records that focused less on political matters. And without those reliable Chinese chronologies and commentaries, it really leaves a bit of a vacuum in getting an accurate picture of the Dali Kingdom. Despite the kingdom's best efforts, and they really tried, the one and only thing the Song emperors and Kaifeng wanted from Dali were their horses. That's what made Yunnan so important. Because of all the unrest on the Song northern borders, and especially after the disaster that befell the Song royal family in 1127, when Emperors Huizong and Qinzong were carted off to Manchuria by the Jurchens, the Song lost that easy access to northern-bred horses. And in order to fight these wars in western Xia and with the Khitans and Jurchens, the demand for horses was insatiable, and Dali became the only reliable place to procure them. Silk was the main commodity traded by the Chinese for horses. Markets were set up to deal in them, and the entire purchasing process was controlled by a special branch of the Song government. Anything that involved the defense of the country and the most profitable commodities was always government-controlled. Dali had its share of succession struggles and usurpers. The troubles began in 1080 following the usurpation of the throne by one of the Dali king's ministers, Yang Yizhen. Yang Yizhen was one of those many men who would be king in Chinese history. Upon seizing the throne, he declared himself Emperor Guang'an, and then he was killed. The end. And that was also the end of the Duans and their Dali Kingdom. Or was it? Not that long after, the Dali Kingdom began life anew, with the same old Duan family ruling. This is the same Duan family that went back to the Dali Kingdom founder, Duan Siping. They reigned, but real power behind the throne was controlled by the Gao family. The Gaos were sort of like their counterparts in Japan at that time, the Fujiwaras. The Gao family rose to prominence in the 11th century when Dali ruler Duan Silian granted the title of Grand Guardian, or Taibao, to Gao Zhisheng for his timely assistance in quashing a rebellion. And the Gaos had achieved their importance at the Dali court for consistently acting as the first line of defense when rebellions broke out. And now, in the late 11th century, they dominated Dali politics. Later on in the 1080s, so powerful had the Gaos become, they made a power grab, and Dali king Duanzheng Ming was deposed and forced to abdicate in favor of Gao Zhisheng's son, Gao Shengtai. And the Gaos in 1094, aspiring for their own dynasty, established the Great Central Kingdom, Da Zhongguo. But one unanticipated problem that gave the Gaos pause to consider their royal aspirational ideas was that most all of the tribal chieftains of the kingdom still supported the Duans. And further to that, they were quite unhappy with the new arrangement with the Gaos. So to please the tribes of the region and to keep the peace, the Gaos opted to restore the Duans to the throne. And in 1095, Gao Shengtai had to walk back that Da Zhongguo, Great Central Kingdom idea, and change the name back to what it was before, the Dali Kingdom. Before dying, Gao Shengtai asked his son, Gao Taiming, to return the throne back to the Duan family. This was in 1096. Duan Zhengchun was named the new king, and the Gao family continued to rule behind the curtain. And it stayed this way till the end of the Dali Kingdom. That was a bit of a setback for the Gaos, not getting to keep that golden ring. Yuan Shikai had the same thing happen to him 82 decades later. But the Gaos weren't the first, nor were they the last, who tried to carve out a family ruling dynasty in China and were never able to get any traction. And this time, beginning with the restoration of the Duans to the kingship, is called the later Dali Kingdom. It ran until the Mongol Conquest in 1253, and everything prior, going back to Duan Siping in 937, is called the former Dali Kingdom. The Duans mainly concerned themselves with more ceremonial affairs, which all revolved around the Buddhist faith, one of the pillars of the Dali Kingdom. I haven't mentioned this yet, but prior to the fall of the Northern Song in 1127, all along the Dali royal court had been sending regular appeals to the Song emperor to enjoy closer relations. There was finally some movement in 1117 when the Dali king, the 16th one since Duan Siping, Duan Yu, declared his loyalty to Song, and in exchange for this, the Duan ruler was finally given the King of Dali title, Dali Guowang, that they had so long sought from the Song imperial court, and this opened the door to a more formal political relationship between the two. By the way, all of these Dali kings, going back to the beginning, I've been referring to them by their personal names, Duan something or other. Following the fall of the northern Song in 1127, Dali King Duan Yu sent an embassy to the southern Song court to try and reestablish relations. Dali-Song relations remained low on drama, with horses continuing to play a key role in the association. The 12th century Dali royal court of the Duans continued to go out of their way to act in the role of model Buddhist kings, wrapping themselves up in all the trappings of the religion to assist in proving their greatness and majesty. By the 1140s, there wasn't a civil war going on, but the Wuman nobles from their western Yunnan power center fought constantly with the ruling Gao family. All wasn't so peaceful inside the kingdom. We all know what was about to happen at the dawn of the 13th century. 1206, Genghis Khan unified the Mongol tribes, and where China was concerned, in 1234, there was a short-lived Mongol-Song alliance that put an end to the Jurchen Qing dynasty. And once the Qing were conquered, the Mongols set their sights on Song China. In 1235, the Mongol-Song War broke out, and surprisingly, the southern Song military at first turned out not to be this pushover as expected. Therefore, Mongol ruler Mongke Khan decided they needed to conquer Dali first and then use this southwest position to attack Song. Even at their mightiest, the Mongols were still looking to avoid a frontal assault from the north. That had a bloody and unpredictable outcome, and they were looking to avoid that possibility. Before resorting to war, the Mongols dispatched envoys to the Dali court. The Dali king at the time, Duanxing was quick to submit to their might. But the Gao family didn't feel the same way, and they murdered the envoys from the Khan. That took guts. No one, not the Han, the Jin, the Tang, and now the Song, no one in North China could vanquish the rulers of Yunnan and bring that 420-something thousand square kilometer tract of land into China proper. Not yet. Southern Song was actually a much easier state to take down. Once their capital was taken and the imperial court captured, the dynasty was decapitated. The Zhao family of the Song made desperate attempts to stay alive, but that was all for naught. Yunnan, on the other hand, despite the capital of the kingdom being in Dali, was a very decentralized place and not so easy or simple to vanquish like the southern Song. The Mongols could take the capital, but that didn't mean the fight was over. Now the Mongols were going to give it a go. In 1252, the great Khan, Mongke, ordered brother Kublai to handle this big job to put an end to Dali. And in the following year of 1253, Kublai Khan and two other generals led 3 large armies through Ningxia, Gansu, across the Tibetan Plateau, and into western Sichuan. And from there, they marched south into Dali, and within a year, the Dali Kingdom was vanquished. It was 1253. In popular Chinese history, it said Yunnan was formally annexed into China proper in that year, 1253, when the Dali Kingdom fell to the Mongols. The Dali ruler, Duanxing made it easy for Kublai Khan by first defecting to the Mongols, and then he further ingratiated himself by fighting on their behalf to pacify those parts of Yunnan the Mongols hadn't taken yet. And for his troubles, they made Duanxing their man in Yunnan, and the Duans continued to administer the land, serving as part of the new Mongol Tu-si system that was put in place. This Tu-si system allowed for a high degree of local rule. For the Mongols, in their big picture, they saw Yunnan as a forward base into Burma and Dai Viet. But more pressing than those conquests was the final conquest of the southern Song, and as planned, Yunnan province was going to be fully utilized as their backdoor into China. Into the 1250s, the Mongols, along with their Duan allies, ran roughshod over Yunnan, tamping down any resistance, and at great cost, too. By 1254, Kublai Khan felt this conquest was secure, so he personally left Yunnan. By 1256, Mongol general Yuan Dynasty had Yunnan under control. With that all taken care of, the time had finally come to finish off the southern Song. In 1258, even Mongol Khan himself showed up to participate in this final assault. Up and down the Yangtze River and in Sichuan, the fighting went on. Then came the shock, sudden death of the great Khan Mongol in August 1259, it's believed, around present-day Chongqing. That put further conquest on ice until the 4-year Tuluid War between the two brothers Kublai Khan and Arik Boke was concluded. And in 1271, Kublai Khan had almost finished what he set out to do and declared the founding of the Yuan Dynasty. The Duans continued to rule Yunnan for the Yuan court. As with the Song, relations were low on drama for the remaining years of the Yuan dynasty. The Yuan court usually adopted a policy that allowed these places that required special handling to be ruled by their local chieftains. Although there was a rule book they had to follow, I'm sure. As long as everything remained peaceful, there remained no need to send in the Mongol army, and that's how things went in Yunnan. In 1274, the Yunnan administrative province was formed, with its capital in Kunming. Back then, Yunnan was a bigger province than on today's map and included parts of Guizhou. But at least since then, 1274, this province has formally existed as Yunnan province. I don't mean to jump ahead, but the Mongols barely lasted a century on the main stage of Chinese history. In 1368, Zhu Yuanzhang, he seized the mandate of heaven from the last Mongol Yuan Dynasty emperor and established the Ming. But Yunnan, despite being a province and all, apparently didn't come standard equipment with that transfer of political sovereignty. The Mongol soldiers, who had long been based in Yunnan, had thus far been able to hold off the Ming army. When Khanbalik fell in 1368, a grandson of Kublai Khan, named Basalawarmi, had been ruling in Yunnan on behalf of the Yuan dynasty. He had been given the Yuan title of Prince of Liang and served as a viceroy down there. And after the fall of Khanbalik, I guess no one told him because he decided not to surrender to the Ming, and Basalawarmi became a Yuan loyalist holdout down in Yunnan. From the moment he sat on the throne in Nanjing in 1368 till 1375, Zhu Yuanzhang had dispatched a bunch of envoys to Yunnan trying to get the Prince of Liang to capitulate. No one there was amenable to giving the Hongwu Emperor, at the peak of his powers no less, what he wanted, so he had to do things the hard way and went on the warpath. For obvious reasons, the new Ming Empire had to shut down the Mongols in the southwest. The Yuan dynasty was down, but not out, and they lived on as the northern Yuan dynasty until 1635. Between all the hell that Essen and Dayan Khan had in store for the Ming in the 15th and early 16th century, the imperial court was kept under a sustained period of stress on their northern frontier, and they didn't need any Mongols in large numbers on their south flank either. It took until 1381, 13 years into the Ming, for Zhu Yuanzhang to send his top general, Fu Youde, and 300,000 soldiers to deal with this Mongol stronghold in Yunnan. It was a rather overwhelming force, and the Mongol holdouts in Yunnan were dealt with. Their ruler, Basalawarmi, committed suicide, January 1382. And here the Ming army took control of eastern Yunnan, but not Dali. Basalawarmi and a whole number of historical figures from this slice of Chinese history got written into Jin Yong's final novel, The Dare in the Cauldron, the Lu Ding Ji. This is a famous moment in Chinese history whereby the Ming army, following the final defeat of the Mongols in Yunnan, castrated 380 captured Mongol and Muslim men and boys, and among them was none other than Ma He himself, who, following his castration, was sent to Beijing to work in the employ of the Prince of Yen, Chu Di, the future Yongle Emperor, and the voyages to the west that the Yongle Emperor sponsored between 1405 until his death in 1424 immortalized Ma He, who was better known as Admiral Zheng He. The Mongols ruled in Yunnan 1253 to 1381, 128 years. And while they were the masters of the province, they kept a lot of troops stationed down there, and most never left. They married Yi or other indigenous women and assimilated into the Chinese national pot. Remnants of this once massive Mongol presence in Yunnan during the Yuan can be found in Tonghai County, just south of Kunming and Lake Fuxian. A military headquarters had been established there in 1283 that contained a sizable number of Mongol troops, and many of these soldiers later on went down fighting against troops loyal to Ming Dynasty founder Zhu Yuanzhang. They're not a large number today, maybe 13,000 of these Katso people, as they're called, but even after 600-something years, they're still around with some vestiges of their old culture still clinging to life in their language and how they express themselves. There also remain these Duan family descendants of the original royal ancestor, Duan Siping, who founded the Dali Kingdom back in the Five Dynasties, 10 Kingdoms period. All along, they had acted as the proxies for the Yuan court, serving as vice magistrates, or tus, or tusi. There was already plenty of historical precedent for what the Duans did next under their leader, Duan Shi. They didn't jump at the opportunity to join the newly minted Ming Dynasty. That wasn't even a dynasty yet, it was just a new era. So the job was only half done where Yunnan was concerned. The Yuan remnants tried to hold on to what they had. Well, they were gone. There were just these guys, the Duans. See, as you could see, it took a long time for the Jews of the Ming Dynasty to take over Yunnan. Fu Youde, still fighting down there, tried to find a diplomatic solution but got nowhere. Duan Shi started picking through the pieces of past history with the Tang, the Song, and what Zhao Kuangyin had once said about everything west of the Dadu River being Dali lands. So rather than fold, Duan Shi tried to sell the Hongwu emperor on the idea of an old-fashioned tribute relationship. And that wasn't what Zhu Yuanzhang had in mind. After that frustrating period of back and forth negotiating between Fu Youde and the Duans and Dali, the Ming side knew any attempts at working this out peacefully were a waste. In 1382, they went in and defeated the Duans. Eliminating the Duans was the easy part. The Ming authorities now had to go in and fill those very complicated shoes. They will expend no small amount of effort to reel Yunnan into the empire and institutionalize the management of the hundreds of one-time lords, now reduced to minor chieftains. Han Chinese from the north and east of Yunnan had been migrating there on and off for centuries. But following the Ming conquest, these hundreds of thousands of soldiers, originally from outside Yunnan, were asked to remain where they were and begin life anew with the Yunnan hukou, so to speak. And with so many people suddenly calling Yunnan home, that did quite a lot to transform society there. And besides that, the Ming always kept an oversized garrison in Yunnan just in case. And these soldiers, too, brought their families and planted roots there. And the Ming military stationed down in Yunnan played a dual role in performing other kinds of service to the state besides defense. By the time of the Qing Emperor, 1521 to 1567, China's forests had become depleted after all those palaces, treasure boats, a navy, and every other application for lumber that a fast-growing empire has need for. And after all the damage had been done harvesting these trees, that's when the call went out to start prospecting for forest lands down in Yunnan that had the varieties of woods required by the government, and a lot of trees got cut down. Here, during the Ming, efforts were made by the central government to once and for all bring Yunnan into the bosom of core China. The Tang rulers had to deal with Nanzhao. The Song had Dali, a more peaceful but no less powerful neighbor. The Yuan Dynasty created the province of Yunnan, but they never really did much with it, except try and hold on to it. As long as their Duan family agents kept the silver flowing and the rebellions from happening, they didn't micromanage anything. Silver became the most important metal in China during the Ming as new monetary policies were enacted that required lots of silver, and Yunnan had lots of that metal. Believe it or not, up to this time in the Ming, cowrie shells were still being used in the Yunnan economy as a form of currency. This had traditionally served as the coin of the realm for the Indianized parts of South and Southeast Asia. The shells originated in the Maldives and other points along the coastlines of the Indian Ocean. The local people in Yunnan really resisted the transition from cowrie shells to copper coinage. But now with the arrival of a new dynasty, Yunnan had new realities to face. The imperial court sent a man named Ming to run things in Yunnan for the Ming emperor. He was quite a character, so much so, in fact, Jin Yong also wrote Ming into Dare in the Cauldron. Ming and his descendants ruled in Yunnan province on behalf of the Ming for pretty much the entirety of the dynasty's existence. And if you're wondering, how did someone get such a sweet deal as that? Ming's adopted father was the Hongwu emperor, and putting someone this close to the center in place down in Yunnan theoretically allowed the emperor to rest easy with respect to the happenings down in this southwestern province. The Mu family kept the drama to the minimum and were notorious for their corruption and taking advantage of their plum position. Let me lift a quote from the late, great Frederick W. Mote, my go-to guy for anything that happened in China from 800 to 1800. This offers a snapshot of Yunnan province from around this time in the Ming. Quote, "In the western part of the province, around Erhai, on which the city of Dali is situated, the Bai people were numerous, prosperous, and well-organized. In the west and northwest were also communities of Li Su, Naxi, and Jingpo, while farther west in the uplands were Tibetans, Dulong, and New peoples. In the southernmost parts of the province were Tai-speaking Dai peoples, concentrated in the region they called Sipsongbana, designated by the Ming as the Cheli Regional Pacification District. Cheli's cultural links were to Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand. Other Thai-speaking peoples populated or governed most of the southern half of the entire province. They were an important ethnic element in Ming Yunnan. Also found in the south were significant numbers of less advanced native peoples. On the eastern borders were sizable communities of Zhuang, along with Miao and Yao, the latter two dominating the mountainous areas. With the disputed and shifting western borders were the strong states of the Shan, with Man and Kachin states to their north. The Shan had interests within Yunnan, but were also linked to political bases farther west and south in what is present-day Myanmar. The foregoing list includes only the most prominent of the native peoples. A dozen more could be named." End quote. In 1407, the Yongle Emperor decided to annex that part of northern Vietnam they called Jiaozhi. This ushered in the so-called Fourth Era of northern domination that lasted for 20 years. And from 1407 until the great hero of the Vietnamese people, Le Loi, evicted Ming China from their lands in 1427, Yunnan was in constant use throughout as a staging ground and forward base for Ming troops cycling in and out of northern Vietnam. And the fluidity of that border, where Yunnan hits its foreign neighbors, was never set in stone. Once the actual borders started to more accurately demarcate, it produced endless border clashes between those tribes people on the Yunnan side and those on the other side. This was especially true when it came to the border between the Shan states in Myanmar and in Yunnan. These battles, fought in Myanmar by the Ming army, known as the 8-year Luchuan campaign, was also noteworthy as the first documented use in Chinese history of gunpowder-fired cannon made from cast metal. So we also remember the 1440s as an era where a new destructive medium enters the world of weapons of war. During the Ming, Yunnan was discovered by the northern intelligentsia and highly cultured as a place that was perfect to escape to and that contained all the greatest in landscapes and rural nature at its finest. Throughout past dynasties, Yunnan had been viewed as nothing more than a faraway place of banishment reserved for those officials whose offense to the emperor was so profound they were given a life sentence in this distant and dangerous place. And now in the Ming, and especially so in the succeeding dynasty, what was once the frontier was now part of the state. The system of employing local chieftains to act in the role once played by the Duans wasn't so bad at first. Allowing for a wide degree of local rule by the local tribal leaders kept things quite docile. But by the end of the Ming dynasty, all of the indigenous people of Yunnan suddenly looked up and saw, for the first time, there were more Han Chinese living among them than their own kind. And here's where traditional Chinese culture began to mix and match more widely with the local Yi, Bai, and other indigenous cultures. Han Chinese had been coming in dribs and drabs since Zhuangqiao's founding of the Dali Kingdom. They started migrating to the southwest during the Han Conquest, and it probably never let up all the way through the Tang, Nanzhao period, Song, Yuan, and now into the Ming. By the 17th century, the Yunnan civilization that had been around since the Dali Kingdom took a big hit during the Yuan Dynasty, but it was during the Ming that it faded away. Yunnan had become a thoroughly Sinicized place, albeit with a significant indigenous population. In fact, the same could be said for Guizhou and southern Sichuan, but that didn't come easy. The first of many Miao and Yao rebellions broke out in the 1450s and became an on-and-off-again thing in Guizhou, Guangxi, and parts of Sichuan. And all the Ming-era irrigation and land reclamation projects not only well-supplied the military presence stationed there, but led to self-sufficiency in the province. Ming Dynasty travel writer Xu Xiake passed through Yunnan during his well-documented travels. He spent a few years there, in fact, 1636 to 1640. He had just turned 50. He wrote about Yunnan in his Dianyou Zhiji. During his Yunnan travels, Xu Xiake remarked and wrote about a dozen copper and silver mining sites in Yuxi, Kunming, and Qujing. He also explored western Yunnan along the New River in Xishuangbanna, though it wasn't called that yet. He provided some very reliable insights into a few of Yunnan's frontier lands, where the indigenous people ruled with little Ming interference. The next big milestone in Yunnan history might have to be the day Zhu Youlang pulled into town in March 1656, 14 years after the Ming Dynasty fell. You remember how after the Ming fell, it lived on in spirit with this southern Ming pretender, the Yongli Emperor. This is all early Qing history. That transition from Ming to Qing was as bloody and messy as changes in the dynasty go. We all remember Li Zicheng and all the mayhem he caused in north and central China and his brief but violent Yuan Dynasty. Not as well known was another rebel leader with big ideas, and this was Zhang Xianzhong. He's remembered for the death and destruction he caused during his murderous romp through central and southwest China and for his short-lived Great Xi Dynasty. Legends abound about all the deaths attributed to Zhang Xianzhong, especially in Sichuan where he based his operations. He died in 1647 and divided his army up into 4 divisions. One was led by his adopted son, Li Dingguo, and another was led by Sun Ke Wang. If there was one thing you could say about this whole sideshow of the early Qing, the characters involved were all delusional peasant rebels who wanted to be kings and emperors, and it took a very long time to put them down. Sun Ke Wang and Li Dingguo turned on each other, and Sun was defeated in 1657 and promptly defected to the Qing. And it was Li Dingguo who escorted the Yongli emperor to Yunnan and watched over him until Li died in 1660. The Qing army came in full force in 1658, invading Yunnan. And needless to say, Zhu Youlang, the Yongli emperor, didn't stand a chance. He and his entourage had been a band on the run practically since the day he was coronated. Whilst in Yunnan, the Yongli emperor, with the Qing fast approaching, was able to throw himself at the mercy of the Burmese Mongol Dynasty, who told him they'd help and instructed the Yongli emperor to head to Burma. So 1661, this Ming pretender who tried to keep things alive for the Zhou family and their fallen dynasty headed west in the direction of Burma. And after getting settled there, the Yongli emperor wore out his welcome at once as he tried to build a power base around him. And then in December of that year, 1661, in came General Wu Sankui, leading 20,000 Qing troops in the direction of the Burmese capital. And rather than face an uncertain outcome and weighing his options, the Burmese ruler handed Zhu Youlang to Wu Sankui on January 22nd, 1622. And Wu Sankui took him back to Kunming, then called Yunnan Fu, and executed him with his own hands. Li Dingguo, hearing of the capture of the Ming pretender, died in 1662. And that was the end of that. From all this fighting out in the western parts of China, millions died. So great was the chaos, we'll never get accurate figures, but it was disastrously high. Okay, if no one minds, let's just bring the curtain down for now, and we'll continue on with the history of Yunnan province during the Qing dynasty. Never a dull moment. More Wu Sankui next time, you could count on that. Until that time, this is Laszlo Montgomery signing off from Los Angeles, California, still running the whole show one-handed. Please think about coming back again next time for another exciting episode of the China History Podcast.